Hello, hello. Hope you guys doing fantastic today. So I would like to present to you my Chieftain Smite Brutus build that I'm going to go for. This is going to be my league starter in the 3.26 expansion. I did a quite similar build in the Freesia event. Instead, it was a Paladin, and this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to go over everything in this video. Why we're going to talk about why Smite, why Volcanic Fissure of snaking is so popular nowadays, and pretty much everyone and their mother is going for it. Um, I'm pretty much going to talk about, go over, how we're scaling damage, how we're scaling defense in this game, how good it is going to be as a league starter overall, how smooth it is going to be, potential issues that you can, find in the future, and all that stuff. So I have some footage from the previous event from the Freesia League, Freesia event rather, and we're going to like watch a little bit of this, and basically it's going to be like a showcase of how the build functions. This is, I believe, day 3. I believe this is day 3, could be day 4, something like that, but this is basically my paladin with like still like somewhat mediocre gear. This is also without Smite of Divine Judgment, which actually makes big difference when it comes to clearing. Because Vol Smite of Divine Judgment, first of all, let's talk about Smite. So I think this skill is extremely underrated. I'm not I'm not sure like how many people exactly play with it, but I think it's not like super popular because Vol Smite of Divine Judgment, which is a transfigured gem. Every league is like dirt cheap, and it's very easy to get it. And I barely ever see any Smite builds on my recommended on YouTube or stuff like that, right? So I don't think that Smite is necessarily popular, and I do not know why. This skill has everything to make it like one of the best skills in the game, for melee at least, right? Um, oh crap, that's not what we're looking for at all. I'm using the footage from the previous YouTube video, so hopefully there's gonna be no more ads. Smite is amazing. There's a big difference between Smite and Vol Smite of Divine Judgment, because Vol Smite of Divine Judgment basically has just a little bit of less damage, but clears like just like crazy. Like the amount of investment that Smite requires for you to make it like work is basically nothing, because the only thing you need is like +1 strike skills from the passive tree and +1 on your gloves on an implicit. So you need very little to make Smite work very nicely. And of course, before that, early on, you can just use Ancestral Call. You can even use Awaken Ancestral Call if you want to, for even more clear, if you really need that extra, for example, if you're like farming, I don't know, content that requires you to have like crazy clear. But I don't think it's mandatory. Like the amount of investment you need to put into Smite to make it work is just like basically nothing, right? You don't need to worry about any area. You don't need to worry about pierce or stuff like that or chain. You just slam in Smite and it's going to work perfectly just fine. Another great thing that many skills do not have in the game right now is that Smite can hit twice. So basically, if you have this modifier that strike skills target nearby enemies as well, you can double hit with Smite. You're going to hit with the melee part of the skill, and you're going to hit with the extra area at the same time. That makes Smite it's easy to do, and that makes Smite a very high damage multiplier skill. Level 20 Smite is like, I believe, over 100% damage effectiveness. Just like that, as a skill with this much area without investment, it's over 800%. And Vol Smite of Divine Judgment, I believe, is a little bit less than that. I think it's about 750, but still, for how fast it clears and how good it feels to use, this is very high. This is higher than Volcanic Fissure of snaking. I know that you can use different ways to boost damage on Volcanic Fissure even further, because it's a slam skill, so you can keep on going with exertion and stuff like that. That being said, Smite I think is extremely underrated and one of the best skills, period. And we're going to talk about numbers in a second. Just going to move over here because I do believe that okay, I'm going to showcase you guys. This is I believe, as I said before, day 3 gear. I'm going to showcase you a boss, and I do believe that before, in the middle of the map, I clicked an altar that gives this boss 100% of extra damage as chaos. So pretty dangerous modifier, right? So the bosses day 3 look more or less like this. Looked on my paladin. It's not going to be like huge difference on the chieftain, right? It's going to be more or less. Of course, since then I also made some upgrades to the build, and as you can see, day 3 takes few seconds to kill a minotaur with I don't know what map modifiers this map had, but pretty much the build is not like super slow. You can scale attack speed on your jewels, so it's not that hard to get additional attack speed to make it pretty fast. And it has many benefits. The chieftain I'm going to go for is going to have some differences, but mostly I would say that it's going to be even stronger than the paladin version. So let's talk briefly about Smite, and let's compare it to something like, which I do believe is going to be turbo meta, something like Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. So first of all, let's calculate how much damage you're going to have with Smite, right? So with Smite, Smite of Divine Judgment, of course, you're going to have 38% more area damage. So Smite base has 369 divided by attack speed multiplier, and times 1.38. And then this is the area hit, and then you add additionally the 313 once again. So while Smite of Divine Judgment has about 745% damage multiplier. For a skill that clears this fast and requires this little investment, I think this is absolutely amazing. And let's take a look at Volcanic Fissure of Snaking in comparison. So it's 318 times 0.7 times... I do believe that people usually say that you can hit with a single hit of Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. You will be able to hit about 2 to 3 times. Let's just say that a single hit is going to be able to hit 3 times, right? So it's 667%. So by default, Smite of Divine Judgment is going to do about 50% more damage. That being said, of course, I do know that Volcanic Fissure of Snaking, you can, do different stuff, like for example exertions, to double its damage and like increase the damage significantly. That being said, I don't think that Volcanic Fissure of Snaking clears as quickly. I think that when it comes to clear, Smite Smite of Divine Judgment just beats it big time. And of course, this requires still investment. I had 2 different POBs. One that had Volcanic Fissure of Snaking, and I was, doing different stuff to it. Of course, including using Warcries, right? And the second one, which was Smite of Divine Judgment, and I do believe that more or less that the single target damage I managed to reach on both of these skills was about the same. So it's actually kind of crazy, like how similar these skills are when it comes to... I think that, I'll be honest, I think that Smite of Divine Judgment has the edge. I think it clears faster, the damage is going to be more or less the same. Volcanic Fissure of Snaking might have a little bit more single target damage just because, the amount of damage you're going to get from Warcries, but it's not going to be like anything crazy. And keep in mind that the damage you're going to get from Warcries, of course, you need to first invest into Warcries, so you lose damage somewhere else. So it's not like just like a raw boost for a Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. There is always an opportunity cost. Now, why Brutus led Sprinkler? This is yet another thing that I think that is extremely underrated. And I had like a Brutus. I gave you a showcase before. I had a Brutus build last league, the league starter. It went really smooth. It was strong. I was absolutely satisfied with it, and I'm going to go for it again, especially that still nobody uses it. Absolutely nobody. It's a 1 chaos unique. There is the amount of good things about Brutus Let's Sprinkler just doesn't end. It really doesn't end. It's just like a journey without the end. First of all, it's extremely cheap. It requires level 28. So basically, what I do every time I do like a Brutus League starter is I get to level 28. At level 28, the first moment I find a Chaos Orb, I spend this Chaos Orb. Of course, I'm just going to say that this build is not going to be SSF friendly. But the first time I find the Chaos Orb, I spend it to buy a Brutus LED Sprinkler, and that's it. That's my endgame weapon. Of course, in the future, you want to get like Corruption with extra crit or something like that, but this is pretty much what you do. You find your first Chaos Orb, whatever that's going to be, level 28, level 30, level 40, I don't care. It's pretty easy to, for example, in the beginning of Act 4, to like do like the first few nodes of Delve. There's a decent chance you're going to get the Chaos Orb there or something similar. Spend that, get Brutus, and you're done. And Brutus, almost always, at least from my experience, as soon as you equip it, and you're gonna path towards the strength nodes, the strength cluster at the bottom, which is going to be this one. As soon as you do that, you pretty much get double, triple damage compared to whatever weapon you're wielding so far. It's just how much flat damage, flat fire damage you're going to get from this weapon. And the way the build works is that we don't care that we use lightning skill, which is Smite, with the fire damage from Brutus. We don't care about that because we're gonna get Avatar of Fire from the Amulet anyway, so it just doesn't matter. So Brutus is absolutely amazing, and the best part about this, one of the best parts, is that this is one of the highest base critical strike chance items, weapons in the game. It has up to 10% almost base crit chance, with Corruption is going to be 11%. That's absolutely insane. That is just insane, because it's so easy to get a very high amount of crit chance with this weapon, and even if you're going to run Ascendancy that is basically almost purely defensive, like Chieftain, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter because it's so easy to, I'm not going to say cap your crit, but get a lot of crit. You will be just able to get very, very high amount of damage, even on an Ascendancy that basically has no damage to it. So, let's talk about the build itself. First of all, I'm going to talk briefly why Chieftain. So Chieftain is amazing. Chieftain compared to, I'm just going to compare it to like Paladin from the previous league. So Paladin from Frisia event was very simple. It basically everywhere you looked, it was pretty much more damage. On top of that, it had like a lot of regeneration from consecrated ground and stuff like that. As you see, this build is still going to reach very high amounts of regeneration, even if it's not Paladin, even without consecrated ground. And you could very easily increase that by a lot if you wanted to. For example, invest into these 3 regeneration points. All of a sudden, that's 3,000 regeneration per second. That's pretty insane at this point. That's pretty insane, not gonna lie. And this is also without something like, for example, you could have regeneration rate on your gloves, right? Which is not hard to get. So, excuse me. So, in comparison, Chieftain is going to be doing a little bit less damage. For sure, like 20%, 30% maybe, but it's going to have 90 all res, which is, excuse me, absolutely insane. On top of that, for Chieftain, it's very easy to itemize because everything you look for pretty much when it comes to resistances is fire resistance. And there is another benefit for that. We will be scaling later on. We will be using the new ring that they added to the game, but we're going to talk about that later. That being said, Chieftain, amazing, 90 all res, very strong defensively. As you can see with this, this gear is similar to what I had during the show. No, this is actually better, but this is about day 3, day 4 gear, depending on how fast you are. And the numbers, as you see, are like just devastating, absolutely devastating. I think that the physical max hit is going to be good enough, but the max elemental hit, and this is without spell suppression, right? And everything, regeneration, very high life, all of that is looking very good. So Chieftain, an ability to get 90 all res definitely cracks up that defensive dial to the max. So on top of that, there is another reason why Chieftain is perfect for this build and for strength stacking is Gamahu Flames Advance, which is going to give you a massive amount of strength. This is why we want to get, decent amount of jewels, as many as you can get, without crazy amount of investment, because these jewels will basically provide you additional strength. So, for example, in the large radius here, every single node that is in the radius gives me additional 3 strength thanks to that. So, as you're gonna see, for a build like this, allocating this actually gives me 24% more damage and 400 life, which is actually insane. For a strength stacker, like this node for Chieftain is freaking insane. Not gonna lie, it really is. And on top of that, at the end, we use Sion's Sun's Roar for Warcries have infinite power and increased Warcry buff effect. This pretty much by itself solves completely the regeneration. This gives us massive amount of regeneration and permanent endurance charges because we get huge amount of regen, and this buff is pretty much permanent. It's going to be up permanently because the cooldown is going to be about 5.5 seconds, and the duration is going to be about 6 seconds. So you can have it permanently, and on top of that, because your Warcry power is infinite, you will always be getting maximum endurance charges. There's another way to generate endurance charges. Obviously, it's from Mob's Mentality from Medium Cluster Jewel, but yeah, you're just going to have permanent charges at all times with this node. This node is absolutely amazing. It's truly amazing how good this node is. So Chieftain, very strong combo of defense, once again defense and offense to a certain extent, and ability to get massive amount of strength, massive boost to strength, which is our main way of boosting our damage. So this ascendancy, you know, I used to run this build in the past with Juggernaut. I think that the Chieftain is absolutely crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy how good it is. And you know, I would perhaps still run Juggernaut with like some accuracy stacking if it wasn't for the fact that they added a ring to the game, which I believe it's going to be expensive, but this ring is very interesting and will allow to scale this build later on to absolutely new heights. But we're going to talk about that later. So, what do we do to scale our damage? This is a strength stacking build. We use Brutus to get insane amount of flat fire damage from the weapon, and at the same time we're going to be scaling crit because Brutus has such amazing crit. It's kind of waste not to scale crit on a build like this, especially that, you know, defensively you already get so much resistances that scaling crit on a build like this definitely makes sense. Strength gives us bonus. Even though we do pure fire damage, strength will still give us massive bonus to percent increased damage because we use Iron's Will. The strength damage bonus will apply to spells instead. Spells as well. And then we use Crown of Ice, which changes once again this bonus from spells to attack damage. So all of a sudden, even though we do not do physical damage because strength will only increase your physical damage, our strength will increase our attack damage instead, which is going to work with fire. And on top of that, at increased efficiency, 150% increased efficiency. So as you can see, strength on this build is basically going to give us, I'm just going to change to Vol Smite, but the Divine Judgment. Basically, right now on this build, I have 1,055% increased damage. And this is basically purely from strength. Strength right now is giving me 888% increased attack damage. So we're scaling strength to get A, huge amount of flat damage, B, huge amount of percent damage, and C, huge amount of life at the same time, because 2000 strength is 1k flat life. That is a lot of life, right? You're going to have definitely way more life on this build compared to like your average, like, you know, something else, right? Like a classic league starter. So all of these things combine into very high amount of damage. So you're gonna see this Smite of Divine Judgment right now is 8 million melee hit, but there is area hit as well, which does 38% more, as we established. So right now I'm sitting in about 20 million Shaper DPS on a like day 3 gear. This is about like 10 divines of investment. And the best part about this is that this is not padded. This is not padded whatsoever. We have permanent charges because of Mob's Mentality. We have fortification, you know, all the time because, you know, Overlord. Or if you don't have that cluster jewel, then of course you can invest into this and it's going to be fine as well. This Fortify cluster over here. Maximum rage at all times because we have rage generation from here. Warcries grant one rage per 5 enemy power up to 5. And we use auto exertion with General's Cry. So our rage is going to be up pretty much permanently, right? Unless you're gonna have you're gonna run maps with like increased cooldown recover rate or something like this. Enemies covered in ash every time, and it's safe to say that it's going to be up pretty much all the time because every time a boss is going to hit you once, they will be covered in ash until the end of the fight, pretty much. which means that they will be taking increased damage. I'm not sure about the end of the fight, about the end until the end of the fight part. I don't know if this lasts permanently. I'm not sure if anyone knows. Let me know in the comments. But you know, pretty much you are going to be getting hit while fighting bosses. It's not like you will have to like avoid hits all the time with these defensive numbers, right? So 165,000 effective hit pool, you're going to be totally fine to get a couple hits, especially with this regeneration, and the avatar and the cover enemies in Nash will apply. So this is pretty much it. That's the only thing these are the only thing I have, and this is the damage. Of course, you could say that you know, this is with flasks and with tincture, but the tincture is going to be up for a long time. Because I have 25% unreserved mana on this build, I kind of did it on purpose. First of all, there's not much else you can add in without investing more into mana reservation. Secondly, this amount of unreserved mana, 168, is going to work pretty nicely with Tincture, right? So if you're going to use Tincture, you're pretty much guaranteed that it's going to last for a long time. And for the most bosses, this is going to be enough to just like straight up kill the boss throughout the entire, you know, uptime of the Tincture. Of course, there's some bosses with phases, which this kind of works even better because then you can disable the Tincture, and after there's going to be like the phase, and you know the boss is going to do their stuff. Then you can just apply the Tincture again and use that damage boost, and that's going to be very nice. But like even without that Tincture, even if you wanted to like drop that completely, the damage is still very, very good because it's 12 million share per DPS. And of course, you could keep on scaling and keep on scaling and keep on scaling damage because it's a strength stacker, so you can scale it until oblivion. This is I only have the mid damage setup, right? The medium budget. But in upcoming days, in like 2 days, tomorrow I'm going to like do like a test run basically of this character on the stream, and in 2 days I'm going to give you guys all the POBs from the campaign-ish thing. This POB, I'm going to also use it. I'm going to also drop it in the description of this video because why not? And then I'm going to guys give you the super endgame version, which is going to use the new ring that will give us insane amount of penetration, right? Now, when it comes to defense, the physical max hit is a little bit low, but I had no problems whatsoever having about this much on my Paladin last league, and I think that actually on this Chieftain I have even more. So when it comes to defenses, we use a couple of things, right? First of all, total life is very high because we're stacking strength. We're also getting very decent amount of life nodes on the tree. So 9,000 life after, you know, the reservation from precision, it's going to be like 8.7k. But of course, if you really wanted to, you could get even more than that with. I'm not going to say that you could get more than that because this is pretty much. I mean, of course you could, because you could, for example, get like increased life on your jewels or something like this. But of course you could. But you know, let's just say that this is going to be more or less this amount of life, right? On top of that, we get. Endurance charges permanently because we have infinite amount of power on our war cries, and we use Enduring Cry, so we're gonna have that regeneration, and we're gonna have permanent endurance charges. We have all 6 endurance charges, all 3, 1, 2, 3, and on top of that, +1 on Alberne's Warpath Corruption. This is extremely cheap to get. Usually it's going to be like 10 to 20 chaos from my experience. Because Albaron's by default is a very common unique. So day 2, day 3 even you can get +1 endurance charge, even if it's not going to be 18% increased strength, even if it's going to be 17% or something like that, you can get it very cheap, and you're going to have permanent 7 endurance charges, which is very, very good. On top of that, we use Arctic Armor to further mitigate the physical damage by 21%. This generally speaking is very good for us because 1% less physical damage taken, 20% less fire damage taken, of course when stationary, then immunity to freeze, which is nice, and then it will chill enemies, reducing their action speed every time they hit you. For 25% mana reservation, this buff is very, very, we're gonna have very good use from this, and it's just amazing. For 25%, this is really good. So Arctic Armor, 7 endurance charges pretty much permanently. On top of that, we do have Fortify at all times. Once again, if you're not going to have this cluster early on, just invest into Fortify cluster over here. You're going to have 23 Fortify instead, and additional regeneration on top of that. So it's something to keep in mind. So all of these things combined with this amount of life, and on top of that 14,000 armor, which is not nothing, because armor works really nicely with endurance charges, because the endurance charges will like reduce the bulk of the physical damage, and then the remaining amount of damage you're going to reduce with your armor. So 14,000 armor with 7 endurance charges is not nothing. On top of that, since we use the Iron Fortress on this build, this is going to be the go-to chest, we are pretty much block capped. So all these things combined, this is a very, very solid amount of defense. And on my Paladin last league, I had, I believe, less physical max hit, and I had no problems surviving whatsoever until I got to like very, very, very juiced maps, like, you know, with maps with like idols and like insane amount of increased effect of modifiers and stuff like that. Then I started dying. But here is the kicker. On the Paladin, I didn't have 90 all res. On this character, I will have. And mostly when you're gonna die, when I died on my Paladin, this was because of elemental damage and like elemental damage mods and stuff like that. So with 90 always, I think that this character is going to be, I know that this character is going to be extremely tanky. Comparing it to the Paladin, this character is going to be so tanky that the tankiness is not going to be a problem whatsoever. I do believe. Now to the annoying slash tricky parts of this build that you could get to. First of all, I talked about this before, but early on, getting a cluster jewel like this might be a pain in the butt. These might be expensive, so if you don't want to like deal with this, then you could just like drop it completely and add this fortify cluster over here. The points that you're gonna lose from these points are going to be mitigated by the. Let me put it this way: the points you're going to lose here, just use it on the fortify cluster over here. You're going to have 23 fortify with additional regeneration on top of that. So you're going to lose some damage here, you're going to lose jewel sockets, but this is something that you will have to do before you can get a cluster like this. Secondly, the accuracy problems are completely solved by getting precision. There was one person last patch that told me that they had problems with accuracy and they had like 60% hit chance. Guess what? They forgot to use precision. Precision is very good. Will solve the problems with accuracy pretty much entirely. On top of that, I use this cluster. This cluster is absolutely amazing for this build. This will basically make you have 100% hit chance at all times, and on top of that is going to increase your crit. So this cluster is very nice. So accuracy shouldn't really be a problem, but keep in mind to like use these, right? Because you know, it's even better because we're like slightly above the cap, because sometimes you're gonna have like less accuracy maps and stuff like that, and less effect of your reduced effect of your auras. So this will reduce your accuracy, so it's important to have all these modifiers, right? And accuracy from here, all that is important. The last part I think that could cause some problems perhaps is the maximum fire resistance. I don't think it's going to be really a problem. The thing is that, of course, in order to get 90 all res, we need to maximize our fire resistance. So one way we do that is just by getting Purity of Fire, obviously, right? Additional fire resistance and additional maximum fire resistance. It's a no-brainer. We just need to use that. But right now you're sitting at 79% fire resistance basically. And what I do to cap my fire res, early on at least, is just by getting maximum fire resistance jewels. Once again, I'm going to say that right now, this is not going to be a good build for SSF, but in trade, I think that getting something similar, even without the crit damage multiplier, just attack speed and maximum fire resistance, literally just 2 modded jewels, should be very easy. If you're still going to struggle in getting stuff like that, then I guess in the beginning you would just put any jewels you would find that are like decent and invest into these points over here and just drop life early on, right? Just literally drop life anywhere you can. And just invest into maximum fire resistance here, maximum fire resistance here, over here, and there's a 3%, there's another 3%, and you can use, for example, Rise of the Phoenix instead of shield like this, and boom, you're done. you're literally done after that, right? You're going to be sitting at close to 90% or 90%. So yeah, that's one way to solve the problem, and after that you're gonna start slowly getting more and more jewels with maximum fire resistance, and then you're gonna start specking out of these maximum resistance jewels. And I think this shouldn't be a big problem, but if someone is going to find like more problems with this build potentially that you could have, please let me know. I'm going to analyze that, because this is not like fully 100% optimized tree yet. I will be still tampering with it and trying to make some changes if necessary. But I'm pretty satisfied with it, but there might be some changes still. Last thing I'm going to talk about is that the reason why I chose Chieftain is because I think that Chieftain is going to be super cool when it comes to how hard you can scale with the new ring. To those that don't know, there is a new ring that basically reads as you have 50%, let's just say, less fire resistance, reduced fire resistance, but your overcapped fire resistance is going to be giving you fire penetration basically. So with something like Chieftain, you can absolutely abuse that to oblivion. I think that this is going to be a setup that I'm going to use with Mage Blood, because Mage Blood, you're going to get fire resistance from Mage Blood, then you're going to start using Flask, Ruby Flask, for massive amount of fire resistance, and then you're going to use like elemental resistances on your Flask suffix probably, and then you're going to get instead of maximum fire resistance jewels, because you won't need them anymore, you're going to use fire resistance here on your jewels, and then try to fit in as much fire resistance, maybe with a helical ring as well, fire resistance everywhere. And at this point I do believe that you can get to about 500 fire resistance. So with the reduction, you will be still sitting at about 250% or something like that, maybe a little bit more than that. So I think it's totally possible to get about 200% penetration from that ring, and that's going to multiply our damage like many times over, right? And this is going to be the late game setup I'm going to be going for, and I think this is absolutely going to destroy everything in the game, including pinnacle bosses, of course. But I don't think you even need, of course, this setup to kill pinnacle bosses very effectively, because this build is just going to be very tanky and going to have very high regeneration and a very good amount of damage at the same time. One thing I didn't mention at all is that, for example, instead of using Archon Kite Shield, of course you can use Rapid Globe. That is basically 40% more damage just like that. So with this setup, I'm sitting at 26 million right now. And this is still, there's nothing crazy in here. This is still cheap. This is still day 3/day 4 here. Day 2 if you're a fob gun. If you play all the time, if you don't sleep, then it's arguably this is day 2. So yeah, I think that the character is going to feel absolutely fantastic. Let me know down in the comments if you found something unusual or something that I messed up, perhaps, because you know, I haven't played PoE 1 that much in the past year. It's been mostly PoE 2. Before that, I've been still streaming League of Legends, right? So perhaps there is something I'm missing, but I think everything is fine. But let me know in the comments. And in 2 days, I believe tomorrow, I'll be doing like a test run of this build in the campaign. And in 2 days, I'm going to release another video. In this build, we're going to talk about. We're gonna have 3 versions of this build, basically. The early in the campaign and right out of the campaign. Then this version, and then I'm going to talk about the super late game version when I'm going to optimize it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and see you next time. Bye bye.